Name's David Lange, and I'm an Aussie from Perth originally, and I emigrated to Israel in the year 2000, so 25 odd years ago. And yeah, I'm still very heavily involved with what's going on in Australia. I combat anti-Semitism for a living, and yeah, that's pretty much my life in a nutshell.
I think that word probably triggers a lot of people for different reasons. In fact, before October 7, I felt like the word anti-Semitism was overused by even many within our own community.
Yeah.
Now, since October 7, I've noticed how pervasive and persuasive anti-Semitism has really gotten. I even started using, I only would call it Jew hatred before
Absolutely,
then.
Yeah.
What has changed in your eyes? And has it changed for you too?
No, but first of all, I want to address your original point, which is people were overusing it. I agree with that statement as well. And I've always made it my business to identify, not cry wolf about it. And I agree with you also that it's Jew hatred, and that's the better way of mentioning it. Because once you call it anti-Semitism, you have the idiots on the left and elsewhere saying, but we're the Semites. You sort of play into that little intellectual exercise, a totally irrelevant exercise. So, look, I think what's happened since October the 7th, which is almost counterintuitive, because you thought we'd get more sympathy, and maybe we got sympathy the day after, maybe for 24 hours. That's it. And then, rabbit hunting season started, or Jew hunting season. And what I've noticed is, as before October the 7th, where you might have looked at it as being anti-Zionist, sort of couching things in terms of criticism of Israel and Zionists, now it's fully blown, anti-Semitic tropes, unabashed. You saw just, for instance, and not just in Australia, obviously, this nightclub incident that happened, I think it was in Miami, with all those anti-Semitic influences, Fuentes and Myron Gaines, and, playing Heil Hitler. I mean, would that have happened before October the 7th? I don't think so. It's almost like they've been testing the waters, and they just inch further and further over that line until they realise, wait, not only is it acceptable, but it's kind of like the trendy thing to do. And that's what makes it so scary. And the other thing that makes it really scary, Avi, is that before October the 7th, I would have said it's just from the woke left. Okay, also the radical Islamic anti-Semitism, but what we've noticed is in the conservative movement, you've got what we call the woke right. And it's a horseshoe theory where sometimes you can't even tell the difference between the arguments between the woke left and the woke right. It's like they're saying the same things, they're just coming from a different angle.
You're obviously an Aussie expat, and you do a lot of work around the anti-Semitism in Australia from all those groups. Has anything surprised you about the rise of anti-Semitism in Australia specifically?
Look, I can't help but mention Bondi. So before Bondi, I would say the surprising thing was the October the 7th, how things had escalated in terms of the rhetoric and the encampments, and it was almost like they were playing from the same playbook that we saw all around the world, until you dig under the bonnet, as you have and I have, and you realise it's all coming from the same sources, right? You've got all this money that's been pumped in through the education system, whether it's from Qatar, whether you've got the Russians involved with this communist propaganda from way back in the 70s. As I'm sure you're aware. So all the seeds were kind of planted. It's almost like sleeper cells. And then you actually have, in Australia, the actual sleeper cells from the Islamic community. These refugees that came into the country, and some of them probably were, genuine, and we feel for them. But there was no doubt that there was a significant number of, people that were being funded and extreme. And when you look at the protests in Australia, you see, the heads of the snake are usually these sorts of people, and they bring along the woke left idiots, the useful idiots along for the ride. So it's this sort of perfect storm that came about in Australia. But what Bondi showed is when it, manifested itself in violence, in extreme violence. Yes, we had the synagogue bombings. Thankfully, I don't believe anyone was killed in those, or the arson attacks. But Bondi was what we've seen in the States for a long time. So I would say that escalation was the thing that surprised me the most. But when I say surprised, maybe I'm not so surprised. I'm just shocked.
Finally, I guess what's your message to Australians, to Canadians, that's our biggest base, but even to Americans, to the diaspora, to anyone outside of Israel or outside of the Jewish community who are possibly apathetic about this issue?
Yeah. So I say don't be apathetic about the issue, not because, I want your support, but because this isn't just our issue. It's not just the Jewish people's issue. We're always the canaries in the coal mine. I'm sure many people have heard that expression before, but it's true. They always first come for the Jews. And usually in history, if you look at history, and I'm a student of history, it's the coming for the Jews is sort of almost like the heralding in of the decay of that civilization. So it doesn't bode well for the countries that we see this rise in Jew hatred, but more than that, they're coming not just for the Jews, they're coming for the values, the Judeo-Christian values. I say Judeo-Christian, but also, Muslim people that believe in God in a peaceful way, they're included in those values as well. So it really, and we see it manifest itself, for instance, in Australia, because look what they've done. Australia Day was yesterday, as you know. Happy Australia Day, everyone. I see it being called Invasion Day. And who is pushing this message the most? The so-called pro-Palestinian or anti-Israel crowd. And they've kind of latched on to the Aboriginal cause. Many Aborigines are not, they're proud Australians, and they see this whole sort of separation and Invasion Day rhetoric as being very divisive, which it is. You can acknowledge them as the original inhabitants, but everyone wants to build a good society together. So they're sowing division, these Israel haters, and it's part of this playbook to bring down all of civilization. And I think a lot of the useful idiots who are playing by the communist playbook, what they don't realize is when they ally themselves with the Islamic extremists, the Islamic extremists have a different end game, and their end game is to have a caliphate. So they're bedfellows for now, so they should also watch out. They should, these idiots on the left should also realise they're going to be in the firing line too. All these, LGBTQ, for instance, who are anti-Israel, anti-West, they're going to be the first ones to be pushed off the buildings, as we know, if they get their way.
Like we saw in Iran in 1979.
Absolutely. So that's my message. It's not just an Israel or a Jewish thing, it's a Western civilization thing. And as something that I follow your work, Avi, and we're mates, and it's something I think you've been very effective in trying to push that message, and I just want to reinforce that to the audience as well.
Ezra Levant here, along with Avi Yemini. I'm in Jerusalem for an international conference of leaders against anti-Semitism. To follow all of our journalism, go to rebelnews.com.